Join our incredible moms who have mastered the art of balancing motherhood in today's episode of We Time Convo.
My name is Debbie.
This is Liza.
Moms sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and a few hilarious anecdotes. And it all begins now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for We Time Convo. And we have actually a special guest with us, Lana. She's a dear friend of both mine, Irene's, and Liza's. And Lana, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for welcoming me. It's like my show. Thank you for having me.
Yes, so I'm really excited to have you on board just because I love to hear some thoughts in regards to, we're a co-parenting, well, not co-parenting, but a parenting and wanted to get some advice. And so in regards to our topics, one that came up is around raising children, but specifically in your case, raising boys. Liza and I are unique in the sense that we have girls. So hearing your perspective and how that compares to our perspective of raising girls, that is something that I want to hear.
Oh, yeah. It'll be really interesting. That's for sure.
So Lana has two boys.
Yes.
So tell us more about Dylan. And Dylan actually was a guest on one of the episodes, which was like the Gen Z lingo episode. So.
Yes, he was. So I have two boys, Dylan, who is 16 now, and then I have Logan, who is 12, and completely opposite boys. I mean, Dylan, even though I had two boys, Dylan was always like my daughter because the way we used to argue, the way we talk, it was just like, that's my daughter. So the things that he did growing up, I always not say like, oh, my daughter, but I would joke with him when he's in a bad mood. I'm like, Dylan, are you on your period again? And he's so mad at me. Now that he's 16, he's very mature. It's different. He talks to me like sometimes when he has problems, he pretty much tells me everything, which is great. We have a really close bond and a good relationship. Logan, on the other hand, is so opposite. Very carefree, very like, I don't care, whatever you want. This morning I was just yelling at him about his grades and how he didn't submit assignments. And so I was like, okay, no games, no iPad. And he was like, okay, mom. Like, he's just so carefree where I just don't know how to balance him out and figure out him. But yeah, totally complete opposite. I can yell at him and then 10 minutes later, he will be the sweetest kid still. He'll be like, hi, mom. Like,
Logan's really sweet.
Yeah,
he gives the best hugs too. He does. Yeah.
But yeah, that's both of them in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So did you always wanted boys?
So originally when I had Dylan, when I was pregnant, I really wanted a boy first. I don't know, that image in my head always like, I wanted a older son, and like if I had like a daughter, he could be like a big brother type of person. And then so when I was pregnant with Logan, I really wanted a girl, but the moment I found out I had a boy, I was kind of relieved because I didn't know how to raise a girl, especially the things that I've heard when I was younger. I would tell my mom, I don't think I could raise myself. Like, that would have been crazy. And she's like, yeah, you were, a terrible child. But luckily it turned out okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moment I found out Logan was a boy, I was kind of relieved that, I was having two boys.
Yeah.
So it made it, easier raising two boys together.
Now, with raising boys, was there, like, when I think about having Vanessa, there was certain things already in my mind based on my experience as being a minority woman that I wanted to make sure that that was instilled in her. So when she grew up, she would be better equipped to be in this world and maneuver around it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any of those thoughts when you go, okay, I have boys that will turn into men? Were there anything specifically that you thought about that, like, this is how I would like to raise them or instill in them? Because obviously the impact of them having to maneuver in the world and the experiences that you've gone through.
Yeah. So when I had the boys, I wanted them to be tough. So it it's like that whole stereotype, like, oh, boys shouldn't cry, things like that. And I'm not very much of a softie. So like, there are times where Dylan would play basketball and he would fall and, people would run to him and I'm like, no, leave him alone. He's fine. He's not bleeding. It was just like, I needed him to be tough. But for some reason, the tables turned when I had Logan. And I think a lot of the influence had to do with Trung's family. They just like babied him so much. So he's like more soft in a way, but he's still, a good kid. But Dylan is, to me, is like that tough kid now. If, he goes out on his own. I was telling Liza he's driving now, so I'm not too worried about him. But if it was like Logan driving, I'd be like, oh my gosh, is he okay? It's just like different. I wanted them to be tough boys. And there was a time where Logan was wrestling with his cousin and he lost. So he was crying and it made me upset because I'm like, why are you crying? You're a boy. Boys shouldn't cry. But in my head, that's not like how reality works anymore, right? Before it's always like, you need to be a boy, you need to be tough, this and that. The one thing that I both raised them to be was to be respectful. Like no matter what, you always have to be respectful, always say hi to adults, like say yes and thank you, no thank you, and all of that. So those are the things that both of them have in common.
Got it. And I have to say that the respectful and the tough and, like the carefreeness that I've seen from your boys, it's definitely there. Yeah. So like you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's really hard raising kids, right? You don't have this parenting book.
No, you don't.
And it's like, we just wing it.
And it never goes how you want it to be.
No.
Like at all. So I think for me, it's like, I'm going to raise my kids exactly the opposite of how I was when I was younger, because I did everything wrong. And so far it's been okay. But yeah, same for me. I just want my kids to be respectful, just, be appreciative of what they have. And just always like thankful. And so far they've been okay. Just a little, the tweens are hard.
Yeah.
Like Ava's very emo. Like every day, I don't know what kind of personality I'm going to get from her. She can hate me one day and then the next day she completely love me.
Yeah.
So it's just like the hormones and everything like that. And I don't know if it's the same for like boys, but I feel like girls with like their periods and everything and all that, I think it's just like,
I think it's different,
times 10.
Right? Yeah. I think it's definitely different for girls versus boys. I want to say that Dylan had like that attitude since like first grade, and he didn't start mellowing out until maybe 7th grade, where now it's like, okay, he has his moments where he's moody and then I'll check him real quick and he's like, okay, mom. But for the most part, he's not bad. Logan is so sweet, where I was telling Trung, I said, when is the day that he's going to turn on us, where he's going to give us attitude and all of that? And Trung was like, I don't think he is. And I said, you never know. We were
still young. Yeah, he's still young.
He hasn't hit puberty. So it's like we were teenagers as well. My brother was a teenager. I mean, we've seen it all. So I'm just waiting for that moment. But I think for girls, definitely different than boys as far as like the attitude and the moodiness, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So Lana, you mentioned that you wanted your boys to be tough. Why was that something that you wanted to instill in them?
You know what? And it's not something like my parents instilled in my brother, right? But that was always in my head. Like if I had a boy, he had to be tough. He had to be like a man type of, even though they were kids, it's like, don't cry. And just like the stereotype that, I don't know. It's not like I grew up listening to my parents tell my brother that. It was just something in my head. And I was like, I grew up like pretty, I'm not like an emotional child and an emotional person per se. So maybe that had to do with it. Yeah. I didn't start like kind of mellowing it out until I had Logan and I saw his personality where it's not going to work on him.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. No, and the reason why I asked is because that toughness that you mentioned is something that I actually wanted to make sure Vanessa had as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just based on the experience. Like I said, again, we're in a society where, women need to be independent just because of, and doesn't mean that she can't depend on somebody, but I didn't want her to feel like that was the route. Being an independent person, find yourself. The world it really does a reality check. Because I think in a lot of ways, she's sheltered from a lot of things in the world. And so once she gets into this adulthood and starts figuring out what she wants to do and how she needs to maneuver, she needs to be tough because, things aren't that easy or that pretty.
Yeah.
So I was just curious where that toughness comes in, because sometimes I actually don't see it in it just being a boy or a girl.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could be it too, because I grew up where I always was kind of protective of myself too, and the people around me. So that could have played a role in it, but I'm not even sure where that came from. But I always knew if I had a girl, I think I would want her to be tough. But
exactly.
At the same time, I would probably shelter her differently.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that is interesting because I think you're probably right, and to a certain extent, that not so much with boys.
Yeah.
Right. It would be different.
Yeah.
Different
Because
way.
so with boys, it's they go out, their curfew at a certain time. But I think if I had a daughter, it's okay, where is she going? Who's she going with? Give me, the friend's number. I'm going to drop you off, pick you up, that type of deal. I think it's just different, right? Because we grew up as girls too. And when we were growing up, we thought we could do anything and, there's nobody that's going to hurt us, but that's not reality.
No, I was treated different. I mean, I have a brother, so he got to do whatever the hell he wanted. And of course my parents were like,
now, do you
more strict.
for example, in my household, like you said, just a little different. We would have to take care of the inside chores, and then there would be outside chores, which my brother would have to do. Like mowing the lawn, he had to learn how to mow the lawn. Not once did my dad ever ask me and my sister to come out here and mow the lawn.
But you had to do the dishes and the laundry, right?
Yes, the dishes and the laundry, and then the garbage was his thing. Not to say that we couldn't do it. Obviously it shouldn't pile up, but that was their thing. So there was certain things that they taught him that they didn't necessarily expect us to learn.
Yeah. And I think some of that trickles down on how we teach our kids too, right? It's for the boys, you go, outside and you do yard work and
take out the trash.
Yeah, and take out the trash. That's their responsibility, right? Take out the trash and do yard work when your dad decides that you have to do it. But as far as dishes and cooking, I do all of that.
Do you expect your boys to also pick up with the dishes?
So they set the table, they clear the table. Washing dishes, I am really particular. So even when
I get it.
Right?
Yeah.
He's there's no way of just, there's no right way of loading the dishwasher. I said, yes, there is. And you're not doing it the right way.
You can't trust kids because you're eating on that stuff. So
Yeah. So you're eating on that stuff and it's you could get soap residue on there.
Boys are nasty.
They are nasty. Except Dylan. Dylan is
pretty clean.
A neat freak.
Okay.
For some reason. That's why I call him my version of a daughter.
Yeah.
He's just very organized and clean. But when you walk into Logan's room, it looked like the tornado hit it. It's awful.
No, I think it's the same for girls. I find dirty dishes under Ava's bed all the time.
Is it a teen
disgusting
thing?
I think it's a teen thing.
That's so gross.
It is really gross. Sorry, Ava, for putting you out there.
It's just great.
Maybe you'll clean up after yourself.
I doubt it.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care. They're somebody, the dish fairy is going to come and clean it.
Yeah.
Which is mom.
Now, with boys, do you have certain what were your worries with boys, if at all?
So my worry right now is when they're a teenager and if they have a girlfriend, right? So the worries are getting a girl pregnant. We're allowed to say all this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or, in the future, if they go off to college. You just hear all these stories. And then I watch a lot of Law and Order SVU. So it's like, oh my gosh, what if, some girl says like, claim that he assaulted her, like things like that. I worry about their future. Like all the things that I do, I'm setting up for their future, because all the, things that we are doing right now, we can't take it with us when we die. So we leave it with our kids. Right. And so my biggest worry is like, I have 2 boys, and I've seen in the, the past where relatives are fighting because of like, the in-laws. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, Dylan, you're going to have to get a prenup. And he's like, yes, Mom, I know. So he says yes now, but then when he finds this girl, what if she says, no, you love me for me, I'm not going to sign it, right? Yes. So then you can't stop that either. So, those are the things I worry about. Just like, I don't worry about them going out into this, getting into trouble, because I think for the most part, they're pretty good kids. And we keep them pretty busy, so they don't have time to do all that. But those are my worries right now.
So how about as far as them just like knowing how to be a gentleman towards like women, like opening the door for them or paying for dinner and all that stuff? Have you had a conversation with them about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like his dad opens the door for me. Yeah. So it's like, how do I teach him that when they're like...
Well, here's the thing. Do you even believe in that?
Yeah. Is chivalry dead? Yeah.
I think so. For me, it is. I'm not...
But I think... So one of the questions I'm curious of is, because you have boys, do you raise them as the ideal man that you would have wanted? Not to say, not to knock any of our men.
Sorry, everyone.
But like, there's room for improvement, right? And you're like, hey, here's certain things that, I have in my current spouse that I want to make sure that my son has, or something that, they could be better at. Yeah. Right. And I want to make sure my son is like that as well, as he becomes a man. Yeah. Do you believe in any of that?
So I don't, believe in the whole car door opening, but I do have a friend that he's like one of my best friends from SoCal. And every time we go out to dinner, he'll pick me up and he always opens the door. Mm-hmm. And it's just a thing that he's always done. But he's the only person that I know that actually opens the door.
Do you like it though, when he does that?
I don't really care. Okay. Like, it doesn't bother me. So I don't really teach the kids that, but I do teach them, like, if mommy's carrying groceries, you need to carry it in. Like, just, things like that. Or help grandma carry stuff in, help your aunt carry stuff in. So if they see like, any aunt or anybody like struggling to carry stuff, they're supposed to go out and help. That's, me teaching them. The other thing I teach them or try to teach them is like, communicate. When you're angry, don't be yelling and throwing stuff like your dad. Okay. You need to chill and like, take a step away and then go back into the situation and communicate. But, it's hard.
Yep. No, that is very true.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting because, like I said, I only have a girl. So there's certain things that, I want to instill in her. But then there's also my expectation of what a guy should be. Yeah. That I also probably put on her. Okay. You know what I mean?
What is that? So then I can see him. I can see him. I need to teach my kids these
things. I think we're, look for a guy who has respect, right? Mm-hmm. And like just the courtesy of, like you said, if, he shouldn't be hands-free as you're carrying stuff. Yeah. And I think part of that she's actually seen with her dad, like opening the door, like when you're on a date. Yeah. Right? Like there's just good habits, right? Because I think in some cases chivalry is dead.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I think in some ways, you're it's hard, right? Because I think we want we want men to be men. Yeah, but we want this also softer side, because growing up it was either one or the other. Yeah, and I think we want like somewhat of a mix. Yeah. Like of this perfect man. Yeah. Right. Because like it's funny because when I asked Peter, I said, what do you think your role is as a husband? Uh-huh. And he's like, to provide and to protect. And I go, but not to be like kind and nice in your words and blah, blah, blah. He's like, my first responsibility is to provide and protect for this family. So like, that is my focus. Right. And, you know, you may not like certain things that I say or do or how I say it, but I'm letting you know that's probably not a priority for me.
Right.
Right. So like, I probably need to rethink of how like what things that I say to Vanessa, because she might have this preconceived notion of this perfect guy that she may never find.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, you know,
And if she does, lucky her.
yeah. No, but I think it just dawns on me that, you know, some of the things that I tell her may not necessarily be the most realistic.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I mean, as much as we all want perfect guys, we don't.
Right.
Right. But the one that we have is perfect for us.
Right. Yeah.
So.
It suits us. Right. And I think from Peter's perspective, how he says like to protect, I think Chung is in agreement with that too. That's what he tells me. And so I had recently told Logan to start wrestling. At first he was like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to be like Dylan. I said, look, you don't have to be like Dylan, but the reason why I want you to wrestle is because I want you to learn how to protect yourself. And also if I'm out with you, if something happens to me, you can protect me. So he was like, okay, mom, whatever you want. So I think that in a sense where I'm raising my boys, where they need to protect themselves and the person that they're with too.
And I can tell you from raising a girl, the physical protection that, you know, you're instilling in your boys does not come across for me. Like, it's not on my list.
Yeah.
Although it should be.
It should be. Yeah.
Right. But again, there's other things that I'm looking at, but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, regardless if you're a guy or a girl, you should learn to protect yourself. But yes, I can see boys needing to know how to do that.
Yeah. But, you know, overall, you just want them to be respectful, you know, somewhat gentlemen. I mean, for me, it's like you don't have to open the door, but you should be respectful.
Yeah.
Like whoever you're with, don't ever lay a hand on that person, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, if you're upset with that person, then you walk away and then you come back and you have a conversation. But, you know, those are things that even with my own husband, I'm like, oh, just walk away right now.
With you and your three girls, Liza, do you raise, obviously you probably raise them a little differently just based on their personalities.
Yes. And their age, because they're so far apart.
But what do you feel like is a constant with the three that you want to teach? And is that in relation to them being girls?
I mean, Dave Chappelle said it, just keep them off the pole. Like that's all my
So far, so good.
So far, so good. No, but I feel like, I mean, I just want them to be able to take care of themselves and not depend on, like, just be independent. Same thing. They don't need a man to take care of them all the time. And I want them to grow up, and I guess
I think that just transcends regardless if it's boys or girls.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it starts getting a little blurry as well, right? Just because like certain things now you go, oh, like for example, if Logan said, hey mom, and you saw his interest in cooking, would you stop him because you're like, that's kind of a girly thing?
No, actually it's funny because he does love cooking, and like he'll make food for his brother, and you know, he does love it. And so I say, okay, you know, I encourage it. I mean, that whole role thing, it's like, yeah, you know, but in reality, a lot of the famous chefs are men.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's not really a role anymore.
They can get a lot of chicks that way too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, it's a plus.
I wish I married a chef.
Exactly.
Well, I can tell you my relationship with me and Peter cooks. So,
Oh, nice.
So-
So you got lucky.
yeah, so I am, because I don't cook. And I think that's because part of it too is I don't, other than like making rice and like probably making some top ramen and eggs, Vanessa probably can't cook, because I don't really recall that as, again, one of the things that I would teach her. And that's what I mean about like it starts getting a little gray, like these roles that as we were growing up is no longer something I feel like is prevalent.
Yeah. So like me growing up, my thing was like, I always want to get like, I want to be married, not necessarily have kids, but like I wanted to be a wife even when I was like really young. And now in this phase of my life, I'm like, I don't need to be married to be happy. I don't need that. So I kind of want that for my kids too. Is like, that's not a thing, you know, like if you don't want to have kids, you don't have to have kids. That's
and Liza,
okay.
I think that's a really good point, because growing up, I think I envisioned, you know, that, oh, go to college, get a good job, find a husband, get married, buy a house, have kids.
Yeah.
Like that was the way to happiness, right? And that is definitely like, as I talked to Vanessa, she's like, I don't even know if I want kids, Mom. Like, you know, like, so, which in a way I'm glad, because I don't want her to feel like that's the only way to be happy.
Right.
Right. So, and I agree with you. It's crazy because when we're growing up, that was kind of like the path to being happy.
Yeah. Those were the steps to be happy. Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that for Vanessa, she's not looking at it that way. So,
yeah. And, you know, I was really fortunate where my parents didn't push that on us. It's not like we had to be married or had to have kids. I honestly didn't want to have kids. And when I found out I was, you know, pregnant, I was like, oh, well, here we go. You know, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm just going to try to be the best mom that I can be. So, you know, it's a blessing that I did have the two boys, but you know, when I was their age, I didn't want to have kids. And like to your point with Haley, I honestly didn't know how to cook. I didn't do my own laundry, any of that until I went away for college. Like I moved out. So I think for our kids, and it's partly my fault too, I spoiled the kids, right? Yeah. And you feel like, oh, you know, they can't do that, so I'm gonna do it for them. But in reality, it's like if we let them do it and we make them do it, then they probably would. Yeah. Yeah.
Irene, I want to ask, because we have one sex. You have a combination of boys and a girl. Yeah. Do you see a difference in how, like, obviously there's the personality thing, but is there certain things that you go, you know what, she needs to learn this, the boys not so much, or the boys need to learn this, but she doesn't have to as much?
Interestingly, like you said with just chores, right? Paul is assigned to let the kids do the chores. Like I'm not, especially with yard work and maybe garbage. So she actually switches. Like Alina also has to do the garbage. Like with the yard work, Alina also has to do that. And for the cooking, I let the boys cook. Like everybody has to cook, help. So I teach them, like, let's say, like from beginning, like fry an egg. So everybody knows how to fry an egg.
Yeah.
So, and Isaiah, he likes to cook. So he helps me once in a while. Or I ask him, hey, let's plan a meal for this evening.
Does he still want to be a chef?
No. But I encourage him. It's good to know how to cook because it's a very useful life skill.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, for boys and girls. So yeah, I think I'm not sure about other stuff, but I just want to go back to what Lana was saying about getting worried about, like of course for the girl to be pregnant and for the boys to get a girl pregnant. So you treat them the same way, like you tell them about the things that they can do to avoid this, no matter which part they're gonna get, right? But I worry more about the boys, especially during that time of the Me Too movement.
Yes.
I had two boys and I also had a girl. So I kind of worried about Alina, but really more of the boys because like there was that comedian, who was that guy, Aziz Ansari? Like he just had a bad date. And the one girl wrote an op-ed article about him and he was canceled. Right? He had to leave the US. He lived in London. So can you imagine, only like I was worried about Isaiah and Bendik, that could happen to them, right?
Like an accusation.
Yeah, like it was just an accusation. And So I was like, how do I prepare my boys not to be of course, an abuser and a victim at the same time?
Yeah.
So,
and just talking about that, like when I think about Vanessa going out, I always tell her, you need to make sure you're not by yourself, even if you're going to the restroom. Like, make sure, a friend's with you, making sure that if you were to get a drink, that you see the drink. Like, these are things that, is that something that you would teach your boys, or actually doesn't even come up?
That doesn't come up, like going by yourself, or
and I think that's
more
the
for
difference.
girls.
Yeah, I think so.
Because me dating, I do that now. Like, if someone were to get me a drink, I'm like watching my drink, like the guy get me a drink like a hawk.
Do you cover your drink when you go to the restroom, or?
No, I take it with me and I drink it in the bathroom. I don't leave my drink alone.
Okay.
I don't. It's just, I'm just very paranoid. But I think a lot of the big thing for raising boys too is just like consent. Like consent is a big thing. Like, make sure you get consent. Always ask. Yeah. Always, check with the girl to see if it's okay.
And the thing is, like, I joke with Dylan, but in reality, you might have to. I said, check the ID. Check her ID. And I joke with him all the time. Like, I say, in college, if you're going to do this thing that you're going to do, then you check the ID. And he's like, whatever, Mom. I said, no, seriously. Like, you don't know, girls.
He's already an adult, you mean?
Yeah. Because by the time he's in college, these girls mature so fast. You don't know. Like, a 14-year-old can look like she's 18.
And you know what? I've been the one in high school that I would go out and lie about my age.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Luckily, I stayed out of trouble, but I would lie. I would be like 16, 17. You go out to the 18 and under clubs. I'm in my 20s, you know? And I, back then it was different. They didn't,
back then it was different.
Yeah, but
you could borrow somebody's ID and get away with it.
No one even thought to ask, right? But now it's just like, you need to make sure, because you can get in big trouble. Even though, for instance, if that happened to Dylan and he didn't know, he could still get in trouble. Yep. It's like,
that's
it's
like
tough.
statutory rape right
exactly.
there. Yeah.
No, it destroys their life.
Yeah.
The rest of their lives. So
and that's very scary.
One mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
How interesting that you guys brought that up, because I didn't even consider it, because again, I don't have a boy, but that's a big thing now because of what we're seeing in our society, right?
And it's sad too, because then it takes away for the victims that are, really are victims, right? Mm-hmm. Versus, and I'm not saying every girl out there is going to do it, but sometimes you never know. They might run into a girl that really, really likes them, right? Yeah. And they're like, oh no, I want to be with him. I'm going to do everything I can. Mm-hmm. And, something in their head triggers like, I'm going to do all these things. They, in their mind, think it's right, but it's not right.
Yeah. Oh, well, so I'm just making sure, I think for the kids, both kids, making sure they have the right friends. That's really the big influence right there. So I try to get to know the friends for Alina and for Ben and Isaiah. I think that's kind of my support. And of course, for whatever the boys, maybe like that talk. So fortunately, I have a partner that could do it. So now, I try to push everything to.
So do you separate those talks where you're like, okay, I'll talk to Alina because we're females, and then and it sounds like you and Dylan are pretty close. You actually don't see that as being an issue.
I had the talk with him, and then it's so funny, when I first had the talk with him, I said, okay, look up all the different STDs that you can get.
Oh my God,
and write me a whole
wow, Lana.
Yes.
And look at the pictures too.
And so he's like, Mom, ew. I said, no, this is the only way you're going to learn. So I think I have it in a Google Doc somewhere, but he's like, God. Really, Mom? I said, yes, do it. And then so I was joking with Logan, when that day comes, you're going to have to do the same. And he's just like shaking his head. But yeah.
That's coming up, Lana.
I know it's coming up. But for Dylan, I don't see whether gender or not. I didn't have Trung talk to him. But I did tell him, like, look, if you need condoms, go tell your dad or go buy it yourself, But It's just one of those things. And like Tammy always asks me, do you know if he, lost his virginity? I said, I don't know. And I don't want to know. I know it's going to happen.
Would he tell you?
I think he would tell me if I asked, but I don't choose.
He wouldn't just tell you. Like,
no,
hey.
no,
Okay.
that would
So
be
awkward.
a little weird, right? Yeah.
Story time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has a friend where I'm friends with his mom, and apparently we just found out that he lost his virginity only because the mom kept pressuring and asking him, and he was like, "Yes, I did."
Oh
and
my
so
God.
Then he told his dad that he told his mom, and then his dad told me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's a whole thing."
Awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like one of those things you already know it's going to happen, if not had happened already, but I just don't want to know.
Yeah. And then you did your job. You told them, you
Yeah.
know, to stay protected.
Yeah.
The whole STD SA thing.
You're right.
Yeah.
I think my biggest focus for him right now is just like making sure that he, wants to go to whatever college he wants to go, and like with his wrestling, whatever that may be. Yeah.
Now, if any of the boys didn't want to go to college, would you be okay with that?
That would be really tough because in my head, and I tell him all the time, college is not an option. You can't sit around in my house and do nothing.
Yeah.
And I get it. College is not for everybody. But I think if my parents didn't force me to go to college, then I probably would have sat around and did nothing. I mean, I don't have a talent. It's not like I can do makeup or hair or something like that.
I mean, why would you if you could just stay home anyways?
Yeah. I wish, but I wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, but that didn't happen. So I had to go to work. And luckily, I went to school and I found something that I liked. But, if one day Logan says, I don't want to go to college, but if he says like, I want to follow in my dad's footsteps and go into construction, then I would be like, okay, that's fine. As long as they're finding something, right?
Yeah.
But before, it's always like, college is not an option. You have to go. But I think for Dylan, he wants to go. Logan, he's still fairly young. He says he wants to go, but who knows?
Yeah.
That can change.
Yeah. I think for me, it's more of just find something that will fulfill you, but at the same time support yourself.
Yeah.
Whether it be go to college or start a business or, something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be my biggest thing. How about for you?
Well, for Vanessa, she told me at a young age that she didn't want to go to college. And I told her, I said, okay, if you don't want to go to college, then you need to come up with another plan and show me, that you want to do something else and that you've done the work and you can tell me how you're going to get there. And she found that was harder to do.
She's like, forget it. College is easier.
So
You couldn't just be an actress.
she found that that's a little harder to do. And so I think she's concluded that going to college is probably an easier route because it's kind of all laid out for you.
Yeah.
Like I said, okay, if she wanted to be an actress, I'm like, okay, be an actress. Where's your acting classes and what auditions did you find that you want to like all that's work, right?
Yeah.
And this is on top of like her normal school day, and she's like, hey, that's a lot of work. So she's concluded that probably college is her route. For me, that's totally fine. I'm kind of in that same boat as you guys. If you don't want to go to college, tell us and show us what else you're going to do, because you're not going to just sit around figuring it out. I don't believe in that, because I think they can sit around and figure it out for a long time.
Yeah. They'll like milk it until
I'm still figuring it out for me too. So yeah.
I mean, because it takes a lot of energy to figure something out. And you have to try, and then you, in a lot of cases, you realize that wasn't what you wanted to do.
It doesn't come easy.
Exactly. So you have to go and do something else, right? And it's like a restart over and over, and that's a lot of work. So I am so glad we talked about this because I learned something in regards to raising boys that I didn't realize you guys faced. I think for me, just thinking about like what I've heard, it's like there's the blurriness now. It's no longer here's how you raise girls and here's how you raise boys.
Right.
Right. And I think that is like, when I say blurry, it's not necessarily blurry, but that line starts to now disappear because I think what I'm getting from all of us is you want to raise a strong, independent, respectful, self-sufficient person.
Yeah.
Regardless if
Yeah.
they're a guy or a girl.
Yep.
So I'm actually glad to hear that, because those roles are starting to kind of go away. I think that's a good thing.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lana, for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Very interesting conversation.
It was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.